Hello, everyone. So there was a time about a few weeks ago when I would actually be sitting with you in my office and talking about the home buying process or telling you how the transaction goes through, taking a look at homes with me and then conditions. And then, of course, the next process is taken over by the lawyers. In this day and time, though, with the COVID-19 situation, problem is that we cannot meet face to face. So what I've decided is maybe we should just have this conversation, an online conversation where I would actually bring the lawyers to you instead of us going to the lawyers. Today we have from SNS Lawyers, Tejinder Savia and Avni Shah. So I'm just gonna let's see who's here. We have Tejinder here already. Hey, Tejinder. Have I muted her? Hey, Tejinder. Ah, there you are. I can't hear you. Hang on, hang on. Something is not right here. I can't hear you. Hang on. Oh, I think you're connected to audio now. Can you hear me?
Yes, now it works.
Lovely. Okay. So again, I have Tejinder Savia from SNS Law, and she's here to answer a couple of our questions. We are just waiting for Avnisha. Is she running
She's
late?
trying to connect.
She's trying to connect. Okay, that's fine. So what I was telling everybody is this, that normally I bring clients to you and you sit down and explain the whole process about how a transaction goes through when, of course, a deal is firm and then it's brought to you. Um, and you would explain all the closing procedures and everything. But how are you finding that things are going in this COVID-19 situation now? Is it a lot more harder for you, or what is it that
I I thought that it would be harder, but we've been doing video interviews with clients. We've been trying to send the documents to the clients earlier so they
okay?
can sit at home, call us if there's any questions on the documents. And then when they come to the office, we do video conference with them. So we're trying to minimize contact with our clients.
Okay.
And then we're able to easily get the documents executed, answer any client questions. And a lot of the clients are understanding because these procedures are put into place for the safety of our clients and our employees and everybody.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so we do have the pleasure of having Avni here. Avni, can you hear me? I think she's not connected with the audio too. Let's see.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So again, fellas, it's Avni and Tejinder from SNS Lawyers and my favorite lawyers. And we had just started off over here, Avni. We were talking about how the clients are coming over to your office and they're finding it a lot more easier to work with you guys in terms of being safe and working with this COVID-19 situation. Do you guys want to add something else to how differently we are working now versus how it used to be before?
It's just right now we have less of the face-to-face contact. We're doing more of the contact through video, like even us right now, right? It's just to kind of help with ensuring that we don't spread the COVID-19.
Yes, and it's very, very good to be safe. And in those uncertain times where everybody is really worried about their jobs, they've already bought houses. Some people really need to sell homes. I'm sure you are facing a lot of questions, like, say, for example, are the lawyer offices even open?
Yeah, that's one of the major questions. A lot of the law firms have shortened their hours. So a lot of the questions are also like, are you accepting closing packages, which causes issues with keys? So how do keys get exchanged? A lot of staff are also working from home now to avoid the in-office contacts. Even with the signings, we're doing signings in separate offices and meeting through video conferences to avoid that contact with individuals. So there are a lot of changes, but we're trying to make the changes as smooth as possible. We also are trying to keep it minimal in the sense where clients are still comfortable, because it is a huge purchase in everyone's life. So obviously they still want to be informed. They want to know what's going on. They want to meet their lawyers as well and see who's doing their thing for them. So the only difference right now is they're not able to meet us in person, but we do have the video face-to-face meetings.
Yes. So I was there in the office yesterday, and Tajinder was there, and I was just having a good conversation with her about how you guys are actually doing the closings while keeping in mind that everything is, safe, and that the social distancing and everything. I understand you guys actually have a separate office for clients where they would just sit and you would, do you want to explain that?
So we have in our boardroom set up a laptop with the webcam capabilities. Before the clients come in, we sanitize that room for them for their safety.
Oh,
And
nice.
then the communication is done via the webcam on the laptop. So all the documents are left at the room. I have a copy of the same documents that the clients are looking at, and we've easily been able to go document by document and explain everything. In today's day and age, the technology is good. Audio, visual, everything is there to assist us within the process. So we didn't notice any complaints from our clients with regard to this, whether it's an elderly couple or a younger couple, or where you have families of 4 or 5 people. We've been able to accommodate those signings, and so far, touch wood, we haven't had any complaints with that regard.
Oh, that's amazing. And I actually had this client call me yesterday, and he goes, Abby, how are things going on with the city? Because they recently had a closing, and it seems that he called the city to figure out something about property taxes. And then they said, well, we haven't heard from the lawyers, or we don't have proper information, or we don't have the staff to process everything, to transfer the names, or whatever the case may be, registry. So how is that working out? I mean, how long is that process going to take?
In terms of getting the information across, once the closing happens, we're still immediately sending out the faxes to every department, letting them know that there is an ownership change. There has been a decrease in staff at the city levels, especially the tax department. We have seen a slowdown. Just asking everyone to be a little bit more patient. The changes will happen. It may take about 2-3 weeks longer than usual. But the change will happen.
Okay, so eventually it will happen. It's not like just because it hasn't happened, there's something wrong, it's not going to happen. I mean, it takes time. These are unprecedented times. So obviously, things will have to be done in a different manner, but it will be done.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, because these questions I keep getting from the clients, they're like, will the closing even happen? Yes, it will happen. And then sometimes I even get the question, well, you know what, since everything is going south, I mean, everything is going bad, can I maybe not close the transaction? What do you guys think about that?
So the closings are definitely taking place. To make sure our staff is safer, we've just adopted different measures. So rather than running to the bank for all the closings, we started doing the wires into other lawyers' trust accounts, paying the banks for sale purposes by way of wire. And the banks have been wiring the funds into our trust account. So again, using technology, we're trying to stay working for as long as we can without having anybody get sick. right? So we're taking the proper precautions. The
Right.
land registry is not closed yet. Even if it does close, or if there is a reduced number of hours, the title insurance providers have been working with lawyers to provide gap coverage. So even though, say if some precautions are taken and the land registry decides to reduce its hours from 9 to 3, for example, even if your transaction closes after 3, the title insurance will still cover you for that period of time, so you can still close your transaction. So using technology, and in the world we're in, we're still able to facilitate closings as of today.
Okay, lovely. So it's not like, oh, because of COVID-19, let's not close the transaction. What
No.
happens if somebody says that?
Well, we try reminding the clients, just because COVID-19 happens, we're in a state of emergency. That doesn't put your agreement in a null and void situation.
Right.
You still got to abide by your terms and conditions. At best, what may happen is there may be a little delay here or there.
Right.
Even with, like, we've been seeing a lot of builder closings getting delayed. But keep in mind, just because we're in this situation, the builder agreements are not null and void. The clients are also not getting compensation out of these extensions, and the buyers still have to abide by the contract, and they're not allowed to exit.
Right. So no matter what, the transaction has to go on. It doesn't matter if you bought it high previously when there were multiple offer situations, and now maybe the prices may have gone down a little bit. That does not mean that you could just walk out of a transaction.
That definitely,
Yeah.
just because the prices have gone down, would not in any circumstance be
I
a
mean,
valid
not to say
reason.
that the prices have drastically gone down. I mean, but this is just an example. So there's no way that anybody can
So if
actually
somebody
get
is
out.
trying to take advantage of the situation,
Right.
trying to think that, maybe I could get a better deal now, the
Right.
worst thing to do is try not to close, to try to see if they can get a better deal afterwards. The first case scenario is close. If you can't close, why? And what are the reasons? Are they directly linked with COVID? So tomorrow, if the builder sues you, are you able to prove that you're closing, that you could not close because of COVID? Or did you do this, so that it would benefit you? Those are the things that the court would look at when these cases do reach the court.
So either ways, it is a route to the courthouse if the transaction is not closed, right? Yeah. So let's not try and do that, right? Now, with regards to the mortgage, considering that the banks and everything have shorter hours, I think they have rotating closing days or something like that. Now, in that case, what happens if the mortgage instructions do not come on time? I mean, we know that sometimes not all banks send the mortgage instructions a couple of days beforehand. If they come at the very last moment, what happens?
Well, earlier in this in the weeks, we've found that people are still trying to adjust to the situation in the state of emergency. So we are seeing a little bit of delays. But recently, everyone has adjusted to the time. Everyone has come up with work ethics and routines to kind of match what's going on right now. So we've seen less of delays with mortgage instructions coming in and funding coming in. Is there many delays? As of right now, I'm not seeing as much as we did earlier on.
Right.
But even if there is a delay, which we have seen before, the lawyers are being accommodating. They are allowing the closure to either happen in escrow if funds come in late. And if funds come in the following day, we have seen where lawyers are saying, okay, let's just close the next day. Everyone is in a situation, an unknown situation. So everyone is being accommodating with each other.
Oh, that's great. So it does not really mean that a seller will be left without funds to close their other transaction, or a buyer will be left without keys in normal circumstances, in the sense that as long as you guys have the funding, it's not like some buyer will have to look for some place to stay
I
because
feel
they
like
didn't get the keys.
the banks have been good in terms of providing the instructions earlier. From what I see from the transactions that are coming through our office, I know some of the underwriters for some of the banks are working from home. So it's not that anything is at a standstill as of now. They are accommodating mortgage transactions and doing those closings. And I believe they just put into place safety measures for their employees.
Oh, that's very nice. So let me ask you this question. It's more of a mortgage broker question. What if somebody who bought a house, say, a couple of months back, and they lost a job? Then from your perspective, things simply do go on. I mean, it's a totally different thing. I'm sure the answer from a mortgage broker would be totally different, saying, hey, you don't have a job, what mortgage? But from your perspective, from a legal standpoint, what happens?
So we have a similar situation for closing that I'm working on right now. And in that case, the husband is not working due to COVID, and the son was working. So they have asked the builder to transfer title to the property into their son's name. The
Okay.
builder was a little bit hesitant because there are some consequences in terms of taxes, and now an assignment needs to be done. But they're working with us to determine how we can do an assignment to work with the clients and complete that closing. So things do happen. We just have to see how we can work with the situation. If
Right.
the reason that you can't close is because you lost your job and you no longer qualify for a mortgage, it would definitely be something that the courts would look at when and or if this ever does end up there.
Yeah, so every situation is different, and I guess the idea behind this would be the moment you come to figure out that you've run into a situation, you better reach out to the people who are involved in the transaction so that something can be worked out sooner rather than a last
Yeah.
moment thing,
Mhm.
right?
You
Now,
definitely want to ensure that you're looking at all your avenues before you all of a sudden just say, okay, I got to exit the contract because I can't get the mortgage.
absolutely.
Well, adding someone else to title, family member, whether it's a spouse or a child or someone who has a job, help the situation, right? If it does go to court, you just want to make sure you can show that I tried everything in my capabilities and power to try closing this, but just because of COVID-19, I was out of options.
Yeah, it's not like you can just say, hey, guess what? I don't want to close a transaction now. This is my excuse for not wanting to do something. It can't be that way. Now, and I know we're jumping a little back and forth, but say, for example, somebody's buying a condominium and the status certificate is not received on time within the time period stated. Now, yes, one option is to extend the condition, but would that be a reason to walk out of a transaction? I did not receive the status certificate on time.
You'd obviously want to look at how the clause is written in the agreement of purchase and sale, right?
Yeah.
If it does say that they have this much amount of time to provide it, and if not provided, buyer can exit the contract, then it's clearly stated that you do have the right to exit the
Yes.
contract.
So what really matters is what is written in the agreement, as opposed to just saying, okay, I don't want to close a transaction because of X number of reasons. I mean, it's very important that proper clauses are written in the contract, and before you say such a thing, it's wise to talk to the realtor as well as to the lawyers before doing any such thing to avoid any legal implications. Correct. Yeah. And I think, Tajinda, we were talking about this yesterday, that somebody was out of the country and stuck, couldn't come back. What's
So we
going
have
on
two
with
of
that?
those. We have two of those cases now. One, somebody stuck in India, and the other in Sweden. So we're facilitating those closings in that we have enough time where we can send them the documents. They can execute them in the country they are at via webcam, and then we can proceed to close their transaction here. So that even though they're not here physically present, their transactions can still be completed. So those
Right.
transactions are sale transactions. We have not yet had a purchase transaction with a similar situation. I would imagine that in the situation where you have a purchase transaction is something that the bank would also need to agree on.
Okay, that's great. So everything is possible. It's not like if you're not in the
Mhm.
country, you're going to be stuck. The transactions can still go ahead. And of course, the keys could also be, you would definitely work out how the keys would be
Yeah. So
received by
luckily,
the
before he
buyers.
left, he had left a set of keys with his agent for like showing the properties, etc. Normally, when the house is put up for sale, a key is left in the lockbox. So I believe, with regards to the key situation, they're still fine for putting the funds into his account after the closing. They're going to be providing us with a forward check. So in essentially, the entire closing will take place and be completed in the event that he doesn't make it back yet.
Right. So as far as the keys go, I know that I just had this transaction close, and at the last moment we were actually given the lockbox code. So for those sellers out there who are worried, what about the code getting into the wrong hands? Or I assume that nowadays that's how the keys are given to the
Mhm.
buyers. What would you guys say?
Well, just like when clients come and drop off keys, right? The worry would be the same. What if they went into the wrong hands? Well, the keys are delivered directly to the lawyer's office. Lawyers are put into strict escrow to hold everything until the transaction is completed and registered. So
Mhm.
same thing with the code. The code does not go to anyone except the other lawyer's office, which is held in escrow until the transaction is completed, and only then can the lawyer release the code to their clients.
Yes,
In
and
terms
that
of when you're working with a realtor or when you're working with a lawyer, there's a certain factor of trust, right? Because those are the duties that we have as realtors, as lawyers,
yeah.
as professionals. And once you've given the code to your realtor or to your lawyer, um, those things are not going to get into the wrong hands, right? Because we take all the precautions just like a realtor does. And then there is a certain trust factor that the clients have with lawyers as well as with realtors.
Yes, and there's very few people who would actually know about the lockbox
Yeah,
code anyways, and it's released at the last moment and only to the buyer's agent or to the buyer's lawyer, which
yeah.
means there's not too many people who are in the know about all
Mhm.
that. So that begs the question, and I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, but it begs the question, um, if we do a virtual showing, a final virtual showing, and maybe we did not figure out that something was wrong in the house. Now the buyer has gone into the property and figures out, well, this is not how the place was. It is a lot more damage than how it was before. But now that the transaction has closed, do they call you directly right away? What is the process?
So you would take when you're viewing the property, so your first time in the house, we have had situations, so not this is not specific to COVID-19. There
Exactly.
have been situations where buyers haven't had the opportunity to go back a day before closing, for example, and have seen that the property is either not cleaned properly or there's a lot of garbage at the property. So in these cases, we ask them to take pictures, send them to our office. We coordinate with the other lawyer to see that if the other side is willing to take any steps to rectify the damage or to give us any financial compensation. If we're not able to reach an agreement between the lawyers, then the only recourse that the buyer has is to sue the sellers in small claims court. And in that instance, we ask them to assess the damage. So if something needs to be repaired, by getting a few contractors to come in, get some quotes, so that they know what their damage is and whether that damage is worth suing for, because going to small claims court or the regular court has a cost associated with it.
Yes, and there's a cost associated for both parties. So even if after closing, people figure out that, okay, something is not right with the property, most of the times the buyer and the seller and the lawyers do cooperate with each other to figure out what needs to be done. I mean, it's not
And
like,
it's honest mistakes. For example, we had a closing last week where our client was selling a property. and it was an estate sale. Her spouse had passed away. She did not even realize that the shed in the back was full of junk. And it wasn't until after closing when, the other lawyer called us and she's like, oh yeah. And then we were able to just get that rectified over the weekend, where she just attended the property and emptied out the shed.
Okay, so there are ways and means to get things done, and there is always a way out or something that can be worked on. I mean, it's not like just because of this COVID-19 situation, everything is at a standstill and nothing can be worked. So a few of the last words to you both. I mean, whoever wants to go first, what would you say to that buyer out there or that seller out there? I personally think, after talking to you guys, that, hey, everything is good. It only takes time, and we just need to cooperate with each other and get things done. What would you guys say?
It's like what the government's been telling all of us. Don't go into a panic state. Everyone's working together to ensure that transactions and closings are happening. You have hired professionals to make sure it's a smooth ride for you to get done whatever you need to done. So we're all here for you. Any questions, we're always available to answer and ease you and put you at a peace of mind. Mortgages are going through, transactions are going through, registrations are happening. So there's not a big change where someone may feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So COVID-19 has put a dent in our plans, but it hasn't completely altered them or hasn't completely canceled everybody's plans, right? So if you've purchased a house, maybe now you can't renovate it, but the closing can still take place. All the professionals out there and all the essential services are working together to make sure that the daily requirements of people. So for example, if you've purchased a house or if you sold a house and those are binding contracts, those things go through. And this is within regards to every aspect. So as you're aware, we do family law practice as well. And even in that context, the courts are still hearing urgent matters via telephone conference. They're still protecting the rights of children, where you can't just now you can't take the child and expose them to COVID-19. So what are the safety measures that the parents are taking? So no matter what you're looking at, real estate, our family lives, banking system, whatever it is, it might be a little bit slower, it might be a little bit difficult to navigate, but everything is taking place and everybody is working together to ensure that everything gets completed.
Yes, that's great. And so I understand that you both are also working very hard to get all the transactions completed, maybe even working overtime sometimes. So I would say, as I already mentioned, my favorite lawyers right here, Tejinder and Avni. And if anybody needs to reach out to them, the phone number is
416-818-4000.
4,000. And then what we will also do is, I know this was brief, but then we will pick up another topic some other time, and then we will also be talking about that. We will be asking for questions. If you guys have any questions, then you can always email me and at realtorabbytrivedi@gmail.com, and we will be bringing them both over again, and then they can answer the questions that you might have. If you, in the meantime, like they said, if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to them. They do real estate law, family law, any other law that you guys do, corporate law.
Wills and estates.
Wills and estates, everything is there. So thank you, ladies. I will talk to you ladies soon. And
thank you, Abby.
Thank you for having us, Abby.
No worries. Take care. Bye.
Bye.